and thank you for joining us for another episode of Business PNG. The PNG Biomass Power Generation Project in Lae is expected to go into the front-end engineering and design, or FEED stage, in January 2016. PNG Biomass is a joint venture between Oil Search and Aligned Energy and is looking at producing power from wood burning to meet growing energy needs in Lae and Madang.
The PNG Biomass Power Project is one that holds the promise of meeting a significant portion of electricity needs in Lae and Madang. Over the last 4 years, it's been a journey of trial and error, both for the staff and for the communities involved. In 2016, it's expected the project to build a biomass power station will go into the front-end engineering stage.
At the moment, we're still waiting to get the PNG Power approval. I think it's safe to say now that we would probably have a project by Christmas, and by January we will go into FEED.
The aim of the project is to provide a competitive energy source whilst reducing PNG's dependence on fossil fuels. Joint venture partners of the PNG Biomass Project, Aligned Energy and Oil Search, are confident that the PNG Biomass Project will begin producing power in 2017. While the concept of electricity production from biomass is more than 200 years old, not many people are aware of the links between tree planting in the Morobe province and where all this will lead to. We're all familiar with hydropower generators where electricity is produced by water that turns turbines. We also have a general idea of how diesel generators work. Biomass generators need biomass for electricity generation. That biomass in this case will come from the trees that are now being planted.
Actually, we've been operating for the last 4 years now, and initially we did not get a lot of support, but now with the increased activity that we've been doing with the number of plantings in the Markham Valley,
at the National Forest Research Institute in Lae, the PNG Biomass Project is growing tree seedlings for distribution. This has become a hub for what will become a multi-million kina venture within the next 5 years. On average, this project produces 40,000 seedlings a month for distribution. Over the last 4 years, workers have been conducting trials to establish what kind of trees will be best suited for power generation. What they're looking for are trees that grow fast and build enough mass that can be burned to generate electricity.
Yes, we ramped up our kernel target to 5,000 per month. So from all the other clones, candidate clones we selected and trying to multiply. This clone 57 is proven to be drought resistant.
The project is looking at setting up an initial 15 megawatt power station and eventually double the output to 30 megawatts of electricity, capable of supplying 180,000 homes in Morobe province alone. From the nursery to the field, before the planting, trees have to be allowed to harden. There are 3 community nurseries in Markham Valley, and the nurseries are operated by members of the community who also own the land.
Biomass come inside and making big difference to me here on Markham Valley, especially all one par area. Past time me like story where me experience already been coming, already been starting me wanting more. Lain boromiro ligriga area tasoro long 400 device. But now milk mosema amigo you right finish now. Something where milk more because me one benefit mikisima or community now come cleaning or device now or kisim ligriga one shilling long harbi machine number.
At the plantations along the Markham Valley, more than 180,000 trees have been planted. The overall target is to have at least 18,000 hectares planted by 2016 in preparation for power generation in 2017.
After the break, Marco Venditti speaks to the CEO of Bank South Pacific, Robin Fleming, on a new segment of the OBG Corner.
Our guest tonight is Robin Fleming, the CEO of BSP Bank, one of the largest financial institutions in Papua New Guinea and perhaps one of the most recognized brands in the South Pacific. Robin came to Papua New Guinea in the 1980s and never left ever since. Tonight we're going to ask him questions about the Papua New Guinea economy, about the position of the bank, but also about his personal story with Papua New Guinea. Robin, thank you very much for joining us in the show.
Thank you for having me this evening.
You came here a long time ago. That was 35 years ago. That was on the night of the 30th of December. Quite an exceptional evening. You never left since. So what did you see in this country 35 years ago? And how much has this country changed since then?
Yeah, you're right. Came here in 30th of December 1980, had one night in Port Moresby and then moved over to Kimby. And for my first New Year's Eve in Papua New Guinea in Kimby, back in the days when there wasn't a lot of entertainment, and it was essentially around being able to meet people and make friends and then certainly enjoy the environment. And I was fortunate enough to meet my future wife at that New Year's Eve party, and she was the secretary for the Governor of West New Britain, and I suppose that was the end of the story, whether we call it Tole Puri Puri or...
How would you define 2015?
Yeah, certainly we have gone through many cycles over the years, and it goes back to 1980s when we had a combination of the closure of the Bougainville mine associated with the political disturbances we've had there. We've had El Niños in the past, which have equally impacted on mining operations. We've had coffee crops which have suffered. We've had cocoa crops which have suffered. But by and large, I think one of the key differences between the current economic cycle that we're experiencing and that of the past is that we do have two very large world-class gas resources that have a life of 40 to 45 years. Obviously it depends on the capacity of government to ensure fiscal discipline is maintained to take full advantage of the revenues which is likely to emerge from those particular resources. But equally we are extremely fortunate to have the gas resources. We still have Octeti, which has a potential mine life extension, and other world-class resources on the horizon. Yes, certainly may well not be at the bottom of the commodity cycle, but the potential's there, and we have in place a number of frameworks which I think ensure that the fundamentals of the fiscal regime will be preserved.
So fiscal regime seems to be the key word, the buzzword of what you're saying. When you looked at the budget that the government has recently presented, do you sense that there is going to be that sort of fiscal discipline that is needed in the market?
Well, it's certainly been able to define both some of the some of the expenditure cuts which were required in 2015 to ensure that the budget remained within a reasonable variance of the 2015 budget when it was handed down. And equally it's been able to illustrate to investors and the business community that it is still committed to a longer term surplus, road path towards achieving a surplus, but recognise that in the current economic environment, to pull back too much may well have some contrary effects which wouldn't be beneficial to the business community as well.
Right. Well, there is a segment of the business community that feels that perhaps the government is pulling back a little bit, and some of the capital infrastructure probably will be reduced or cut altogether.
Yeah, certainly there may well be, but equally I think it is important, and that's where the government's prioritisation of expenditure becomes quite critical. They have said that some of the infrastructure may need to be stretched out a little bit more to meet the cash flows as they arise, but equally we have to invest in education, health and some of those key social criteria, because that's always important for government, not just to look at infrastructure and the cost of doing business, but from a socio-economic perspective, see some of those quality of life issues are addressed by way of the budget as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned the word privatization. I mean, the BSP perhaps has been the greatest success in this country when it comes to privatization of national assets. But this was a long time ago. So I was wondering, what was behind the reason of that privatization back in the early 2000s? Was it bad loans, or was it bad management from the previous bank? And how can this could be replicated to other sectors of the economy in PNG?
Yeah, once again, it was a combination of factors. Some was the economic conditions, some was the management and the capacity to get the appropriate management in the bank at that time, and also a desire to exit government from a business which can become very capital intensive. Therefore, when we have a look at privatisation, it isn't just the revenues that are going to be perhaps generated from any sale, it's also what's the future capital demands. Banks have capital demands to ensure that they're able to continue to grow, and we see that with other state-owned entities as well. At the time that BSP was privatised with the former PNGBC and the smaller BSP, it was certainly a most appropriate time in the history of PNG to initiate that privatisation. It also preserved government ownership via IPBC, now the Kummel Holdings Group, and at a time when the bank was sold for around about 140 to 150 million kina, the government did retain what is now around 18% of Bank South Pacific. Therefore, that residual shareholding has generated probably a capital of close to 1 billion kina in terms of investment in BSP. We remain a significant contributor to the tax contributions. We'd be the largest individual tax payment payer of company tax outside the mining petroleum sector, with almost 10% tax coming from BSP, and equally been able to grow and pay dividends to the government and all the other shareholders. Therefore, from their perspective, they've grown their investment tenfold. They continue to get tax revenues, and equally they're able to get a dividend yield, which at the moment is tracking around about 11%.
Well, clearly your position is very important in the market. Some people are telling me without BSP there would be no financial industry and sector basically in Papua New Guinea. But considering that successful story, why has not been replicated in terms of privatizing other national assets? I mean, there's been talked about Air New Guinea, but we haven't seen really much happening before the end of the year. And PNG Power seems to be a very difficult case as well. So there was a really good start, but it didn't really fall through with other privatizations. Why is that, do you think?
Well, certainly in the past 12 months, I think it's been once again that congruence of events whereby you've had a falling off in commodity prices, economic conditions have been somewhat more difficult. If you're looking at investors, at a time of, as you're moving towards the down cycle in economic outlook, it's not necessarily the best time to initiate a privatisation in any event. I certainly get the impression that government remains committed to privatisation, particularly with private sector who has capacity, not just from a capital perspective, but from a management perspective. And certainly as you look over the next 12 to 24 months.
So you're saying it's taking a pause considering what is happening in the market.
Yep.
And that's a wise idea, at the end of it. Let's come to the banking sector. This is obviously a very profitable business in PNG. They're telling us it's even more profitable than in Australia. Nevertheless, 80% of the people remain unbanked in Papua New Guinea. So how can we overcome this situation? How can we bridge this gap, which is still very wide, let's face it?
Certainly, Bank South Pacific is and has been committed to ensuring that we can bring as many people into the financial system as possible. Over the last 3 to 5 years, we would have opened up the best part of 500,000 accounts. We now have accounts in Papua New Guinea, almost 1.5 million. May well be some duplication of customers, but still that's around about 1 million customers in BSP alone. Giving regard to the fact that the population is close to 8 million, I think some of those statistics probably need to recognise the uplift which has been generated by way of BSP. Our approach includes bricks and mortar with our physical branches, 44 physical branches. It includes our BSP rural sub-branches and also electronic banking channels and staff who are prepared to go out in some of these more remote areas to open accounts. We had a great image in one of our internal staff magazines, a Kundu Talk, where we had people in their canoes, some of our staff in the canoe walking out through the mud flats to to go see people to open accounts for BSP. So it's how we have passionate, committed staff who are always interested in bringing their community, which is one of our core values, into the banking system.
But they're telling me at the end of the day that probably branch network is something that is going to decrease or stay the same. It's not really going to expand. So you have to look really at technology to reach those areas.
Technology has to be supplemented by people. And we think that's one of the points of differentiation we are able to offer. You can have the technology to open an account anywhere, but you've got to have that person in that location to open the account. You can have the technology to issue the card, but you've got to have someone who's prepared to support that and back that up with financial inclusion training, financial literacy training. And again, that's what our staff do. You need to be able to access that electronic card with an electronic device, which is an FPOS. So therefore you have to have people who are prepared to go out all around the country and put FPOS devices with smaller merchants and smaller agents. And that is what we endeavour to do via our retail network, is to make sure that we can have the staff who are prepared to support our electronic banking solutions.
I see. So it's a combination, really. It is not only one thing. Talking about competition, obviously you have to compete here against two major institutions, which is ANZ and Westpac, both of them with an incredible international reach. So how do you stay ahead of that competition? And the fact that you have a team that essentially is local, you think it's an advantage or is a disadvantage when you compete with these giants?
We certainly feel that the fact that we are a Pacific bank and a Papua New Guinea bank adds a lot of benefits to the way we're able to compete and the way we're offered to get our services and products out to our customer base. The fact that they are Australian doesn't necessarily mean that they're experts in operating in this environment, and it's the approach to business we take, it's the approach that our staff take, it's being able to ensure that our customers recognise that without BSP, many of the services that they're able to take advantage of now wouldn't be available. We are the only bank that operates in every province in Papua New Guinea, and we're the only business that operates in every province in Papua New Guinea other than government. Therefore, to ensure that you can meet the legitimate requirements of all the businesses and all the individuals in PNG, you have to be able to be prepared to back your service delivery with staff and with bricks and mortar. And the fact that we are Papua New Guinea certainly resonates with much of the population.
So when you're looking at the expansion also in the region, what's behind it? What is the drive behind that expansion in the Pacific?
To a large degree, it goes back to the privatisation when the board at that time expressed a strategic desire to expand beyond Papua New Guinea. Part of its geographic diversification, part of its economic diversification, and a balanced portfolio. From that time back in 2002, and that was one of the reasons the name Bank South Pacific was chosen and not Papua New Guinea Banking Corporation. We have been able to execute on that strategic intent and strategic desire, and our success has meant that as a result of that, that if there's any financial institution that sees that it has a need or cause to perhaps refocus their own strategic objectives, then BSP is now being seen as a natural alternative because of our people capability, our capital capacity, and our capacity to execute.
And as a result of that, you feel that the perception of Papua New Guinea is somehow changing because a brand like yours is widely recognized within the region now. And you, in a way, you do carry the flag of Papua New Guinea outside its borders. You feel that there is a change of perception of Papua New Guinea?
Certainly, to a large degree, when we had the recent Pacific Island Forum here, there's that feeling and feedback from the countries that we've gone to, that to ministers and others, that they've seen BSP, they've seen what Papua New Guinea can deliver. The Pacific Games was a great example of that in a one-off 2-week event in our capacity to provide infrastructure, organisation and delivery of a world-class sporting and, I should say, cultural event. BSP has illustrated that it isn't just that organisational capability, that we've got a financial institution which indicates that BSP is taking on more and more of a leadership role in the Pacific region, not just at a political level, but also at a financial level.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon on the next edition of Oxford Business Group Corner. Good evening.
And that's all we have for you tonight. For more business news, or if you would simply like to view this episode again, visit MTV online at www.mtv.com.pg, or to join the conversation, like our page on Facebook for daily business news, or follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle at the bottom of the screen using the hashtag BusinessPNG. Until next Tuesday, enjoy the rest of your week. I'm Leon Jurari, and this was Business PNG.